Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my very first YouTube video. This is a ranking channel where I rank from worst to best. I do not just do sports rankings, but I do music, movies, and other categories. If you prefer a more analytical deep dive approach, that's more comprehensive, that gets into nitty and gritty and into great detail, rather than just a clipped Watch Mojo type of approach, and you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to support my channel. The more support I receive, the greater chance my channel actually survives, and I can continue to create more consistent content. I want to be able to put out content consistently, and support is really the motivation that's going to keep me going, and want to keep putting out as much content as possible consistently. So for my first ever video, I want to do a deep dive into ranking all 18 Big Ten programs from worst to best. I happen to have grown up in Big Ten country, so in fact I am a Michigan Wolverines fan. So I tend to care about this conference and have a lot more intimate knowledge of this conference from watching most of the teams year to year, week to week on just a regular, consistent basis, versus all the other conferences, including even the SEC. Now, I did plan on getting to this earlier before the season started, but getting around to this channel, launching has taken some time. But the good news is we now have some meaningful data points, and 4 different Big Ten programs have actually played as of now, and there's actually 2 games that are underway right now, and that's Michigan State versus Western Michigan, and Illinois versus, I believe, Western Illinois. So I'm going to go off based off what I've seen so far and what I project. And then as I record more and more teams in the rankings, perhaps I'll have more information on those teams if they have played. All right, to start off on our list at the very bottom, worst to best, number 18, I have the Northwestern Wildcats. So it is well known in college football Big Ten circles that Northwestern is bringing back the least talented team in the conference. And this is by total composite ratings. And they had a very disappointing finish at number 16 last year after such an incredible and heroic-like leadership from David Braun in 2023. Given what they had to go through with the now exonerated Pat Fitzgerald, in the situation that was thrust upon the program as a result, it just seemed like this was going to be Fitzgerald 2.0. And I was expecting them not to be a bottom feeder this year based on the coaching and roster continuity they have over other teams relative to them in the bottom tier of the Big Ten, and a bit of belief in what David Braun could do, given what we see that he has been able to do. I tend to think coaching and continuity can overcome talent, as it has been seen time and time again at Northwestern. And I guess the verdict is still out. I think we still have time left to see if David Braun could be Pat Fitzgerald 2.0, or if Pat Fitzgerald is the only coach that really knows how to maximize the limits that Northwestern has. And, with what he's working with, the type of players that he can get, and maximizing that. But unfortunately, at least this week, it just does not appear to be the case. And just looking at the game, I did not watch the game, but I know it's Tulane, and Tulane is one of the better group of 5 programs. But a Big Ten team losing by 20 to any group of 5 program and only putting up 3 points is not good by any standard. So now I would not be surprised that as the season goes on that they become a kind of a thorn for a lot of teams, like Northwestern teams tend to. They become a trap game for opponents and give some teams trouble. And they steal some games and they improve as the season goes on. But for now, they are my number 18 and worst Big Ten team.
So at number 17, we have the Maryland Terrapins. And once again, it should not come as any surprise that they're ranked this low. Last year, they were 4-8. They started out, as they usually do under Mike Locksley, at 3-0. But then they had a putrid 1-8 season, and they did finish at number 17 in the league last year. And I think that's just indicative of who Mike Locksley really is as a coach. I think he's not the guy for the program. Their window of opportunity was in 2022 and 2023 when they had the quarterback with Tua younger brother. They had a decent wide receiving core, a good passing game, really confident, really good passing game. That they had a good running back too. So they had an explosive offense, dynamic offense. But like every team Mike Locksley has, it's built from the outside in. They always have decent skill players at the skill positions. But when it comes to competing with Big Ten teams, he just does not know how to build a team. His offensive and defensive line just gets pushed around and beat up by the more physical Big Ten opponents. Michigan, teams like Penn State, which they had to play every year. Anytime they would play Wisconsin in the past, before Luke Fickell, they would always lose. Anytime they play Iowa, it would be a nightmare. And, of course, they would have to play Ohio State every year. So it's just this program is just not going anywhere under Mike Locksley. In 2022 and 2023, that was their window. And in 2023, they had a third quarter lead against Ohio State at the Shoe, and they were 5-0. They were red hot. And then Ohio State just ran away with that game and just blew them away from there. And after that, they just folded. Once their momentum was gone, it's just they didn't have any fight left in them. And I don't think Locksley has any – there's no reason under Locksley that they're going to really have any turnaround. They have a freshman quarterback this year. He's highly ranked. He's a top 100 recruit for the 2025 class. But I don't see much returning production at wide receiver. So there's really, and they went 1-8 last year in Big Ten play. I just don't see this team. Mike Locksley is just not the answer. He's not the guy to get the program to the next level. And I just see this team continuing this trend. Until I improve it otherwise, they're going to stay at number 17.
At number 16, I have the UCLA Bruins. Going into the season, I was not actually very familiar with UCLA and their personnel and what they look like as a team. I did not really pay much attention to them last season, given that they are a Pac-12 program just entering the league, and they just haven't been good for many decades. They haven't been relevant. So there's nothing about them that made me want to pay attention to them last season, and they're by far the worst of the four Pac-12 teams. However, they were not a bottom feeder by the end of the season. And you add that they have the 26th most talented team nationally and 6th in the Big Ten. And they finished pretty well last season. They won some pretty good games. They won their last game of the season against Fresno. They beat Iowa actually last year, and they beat Nebraska last year, and they beat Rutgers. Those are I mean, they beat middle class Big Ten opponents last year towards the end of the season. So I was intrigued before their game at Utah to see if their second-year coach and his coaching staff could take any confidence from the momentum from the second half of last season and continue to improve and make their talent translate onto the field. And I definitely got a pretty definitive answer against Utah. And so far, that is resounding no. They just got totally trucked by what appears to be an underrated and underranked Utah team that should probably be ranked and may be a contender for the Big 12 title. Initially, I was thinking with what I mentioned about UCLA's talent that they could be perhaps a lower middle tier Big Ten team this year, and I would have ranked them somewhere between 10 and 12. But they looked hopeless and feeble on defense. The one bright spot is their quarterback play is pretty decent to where I would say he appears to be one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I don't remember his name, but he has good scrambling and rushing ability, and he can sling it around a bit from what I could see. But this team seems to lack the toughness and physicality to compete and be a middle tier Big Ten team. They could improve with the talent that they have, but this is not a ranking based on projection. This is where they are right now, and right now they just looked. I mean, they just got their ass whooped. Might be by an underranked, really good team, but they just got spanked and they look bad at it. Next, at number 15, I have the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I'm not going to spend very much time on this one. Ohio was the MAC champion last season, so for that I'm giving Rutgers a little leeway here. But to be a middle-tier Big Ten team and not a bottom tier, you need to beat a good MAC team by at least 2 possessions, I would say. Giving up 31 points and only winning by 3 is never very good. Giving up 31 points and having such a suspect defense is just... It's better to be Wisconsin, I think, and only win by, 17, or be Iowa and not score many points and have a great defense than to score points and give up a lot of points. So there's not much else I can say about Rutgers other than I think they hit their ceiling as a program under Schiano Part 2. And in this NIL era, it's going to be hard for them to compete and be any better than a 7-win team. And this year is just not a good start in week 1. So until they prove me otherwise, they're the number 15 team. And I might be giving them a little leeway here.
Next on the list at number 14 is the Wisconsin Badgers. I'll have to say I was just not impressed at all last night with their game against Miami, Ohio. This is not a good Miami, Ohio team, likely, given that they lost so much on their offensive and defensive line. In fact, I believe they had to replace their whole defensive line and most of their offensive line. And Wisconsin averaged just under 4 yards per pop running the ball. That's pretty inexcusable for a Big Ten team, and especially for a Big Ten team that is in a program that has ambitions that Wisconsin has and that Luke Fickell has. And it's pretty disappointing to have 353 total yards against this team. Granted, their backup QB was a little bit better. We went 12 for 19, 120 yards. The second half, which is serviceable but nothing impressive. It's just pretty inexcusable to score 17 points against a team like Miami of Ohio. That's probably not even a good MAC team this year to do that. So there's really not much I can say other than that this is pretty disappointing start under Luke Fickell's 3rd season, who's supposed to have an air raid explosive offense. And you're just definitely not seeing it under Wisconsin. I think there's a bit of an identity issue. Like, they're not really a power football team, even though, like, I think they try to be a little bit. And they're not a good passing team either. It's just there's a lot of teams that are better passing teams than Wisconsin, a lot of them. So number 14, I think, makes sense for them. Okay, number 13. Believe it or not, I have the Purdue Boilermakers here at number 13. And their 31-0 victory against Ball State was a game that I did watch most of. The total talent rating of Ball State was near the bottom of the MAC, and therefore FBS going into the season. So this dominant victory is pretty hard to gauge because of how bad Ball State probably is. I imagine a top-tier Big Ten program would easily be in the 40s and 50s in margin of victory. But shutting out a team is always a good sign that your defense is playing good no matter the opponent. I can imagine last year's team was only eking out a win against Ball State. They would probably win in probably a close game. Last year's Purdue team, that with how bad they were. And watching the game, their D-line looked very stout and run, with big boys in the interior D-line. And they were able to get a lot of good penetration into the backfield, so I was a bit surprised seeing that. Their offense also looked pretty competent in the passing game at times. And they still have a talented veteran Maccabee at running back. Is this like his 6th year? I can remember him being a starter in 2022. And I don't think he was a freshman then. So this must be at least his 5th year. I was really looking to place this team at the bottom until I stalled the score, and therefore had to get a look and see. I really thought with all the turnover of replacing, I believe, upwards of 50 players on the roster with a bunch of transfers would have just created tons of chaos for the first-year coach. But the team is definitely not a train wreck at all and looks competent and solid and well coached too, albeit against very weak competition. But they performed better to me than Wisconsin, which is why that I have them ranked one spot higher. But still a bit skeptical to rank them higher than 13 until I do get more data points. They definitely don't come across as the next Indiana turnaround, like last year with Curt Cignetti. And all the transfers he brought in, because his transfers were players that he had at James Madison, a lot of them, and they were proven. But here's the thing. This team has sparked a little bit of interest in me to see where they go from here. At number 12, we have Sparty, the Michigan State Spartans. And as a Michigan fan, I grew up a Michigan fan, and my family growing up, my sister attended Michigan State, and I was pretty young when my sister attended Michigan State, my older sister. And we were, as a family, divided. Like my brother and I were Michigan fans, and my dad and my sister were Michigan State fans. And I always pulled for them. I always rooted for them when they were playing Michigan as a kid. But I think, as time went on, especially with the Mark D'Antonio era, because he's so dislikable. And I'm not to be a hater, I give him all the credit for being a great coach and really putting Michigan State on the map and making them a really good program during his tenure. And owning Michigan. He definitely owned Michigan. But with him, it made them easier to dislike. And as time went on,
especially in the modern era of Michigan football. I would say post-COVID, Michigan State fans have just gotten worse and worse and worse, more online than in person. I don't live in Michigan anymore, so I don't know how they are in person, but online they're just insufferable. So it's very hard to like Michigan State nowadays, and in fact, I root against them. And the rivalry has just gotten really ugly. It got really ugly under Tucker, Mel Tucker. But it's got, I think it's cooled off with their new coach. Their new coach doesn't really bother me very much. But to get to the Spartans this week, another team that's hard to gauge. They played a bit of a mid-level group of 5 team in Western Michigan. I thought they got off to a good start and dominated the first half. Aiden Childs got off to a good start, but he really faded as the game went on, I thought, and only ended up with 155 passing yards and had a pick 6, in fact, at the end of the game. They rushed for 181 yards for a total of 336 total yards, which is not impressive against the 5th most talented MAC team. Not an impressive offensive showing, but a really solid defensive performance where they did not give up any points. I think their defense looked pretty good. It looked like an improved team, I think, in the first half. It seemed like it, but they faded in the second half offensively. I may be putting this team too high, but I may be putting them too low. Again, hard to tell with very few data points this early on in the season. But for now, I'm putting them at number 12. So, next on the list at number 11. And this is going to be a bold, controversial take, but I have Nebraska at number 11. And every team from here on out on this list is a bowl-eligible team, a likely bowl-eligible team, I project. And this is really the start of the middle class here. I think we've reached the middle class part of the Big Ten. I know and I am aware that Nebraska finally did beat a team in a close game, and a Power 5 team in a close game, nonetheless, by 1 possession. They finally did it. They finally pulled it off. But here's my issue. They played Cincinnati. Cincinnati is projected to be the 7th best team in the Big 12. And we all know the Big 12 is by far the worst conference and worst Power 4 conference in college football. There definitely are. They're kind of a mix and match of weak, unwanted, leftover Pac-12 teams and remaining the remaining Big 12 teams that are not Texas or Oklahoma, and a few a group of 5 teams, and Cincinnati's one of them, and they definitely look like a group of 5 team. The way they're built, their size. And the fact that Nebraska was just not able to really sustain a consistent run attack against them and get a lot of push is a bit concerning. And also, if you look at their pass protection, it was really, really leaky. I mean, Dylan Raiola was running for his life a lot, and he was hit and sacked quite a bit. I don't know. I didn't look at the stats. I didn't keep count of how many times he got sacked, but he got rushed and he got sacked a lot. So imagine if Cincinnati can do that. Imagine what a Big Ten defensive line can do against that offensive line. Like Michigan. I can imagine Michigan just teeing off like crazy. So, I mean, their major concern is their offensive line. I mean, Dylan Raiola is pretty good. Their passing game is pretty serviceable. There was one really impressive throw that Dylan Raiola made That was a 50-50 ball. That was pretty nice. But for the most part, they were very conservative with Dylan Raiola. But he has talent. He has, pocket presence, escapability, and all that stuff. But their defense, I don't think, and their defense wasn't left more to be desired. Yeah, they finally made a big play at the end, in crunch time. Finally, they did something like that with that interception. But their defense leaves more to be desired. It's not bad, but it's hard to tell really how good how good it is, because I don't know how good Cincinnati's offense really is. But it's not good enough to counteract, I think, how bad their offensive line is going to be, how much of an issue it will be for them this year, and how their run game is just not really going to be a very dominant run game. So that's why I have them at number 11. I kind of have them at the bottom of the middle tier of the Big Ten at number 11. So at number 10, I have the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think this is a game where the final score did not really reflect the dominance of Minnesota. Minnesota under PJ Fleck is not really a team that goes and runs up the scores on opponents. Not because he's gracious or anything, but because of his style of play of his team. It's usually not a team that gets a ton of long, explosive plays that go for touchdowns. They don't gas you, with a bunch of long plays really fast or anything like that. Whenever they win a game, usually they just methodically dominate and control possession and the clock, take care of the football, win the field of position battle, and win the line of scrimmage. Buffalo is actually an above average group of 5 team, I would also say. Not really good or anything like that, but okay. They pose a little bit of resistance. I would say they're a middle tier Big Ten team. If you were a middle Big Ten team, you would expect to beat them probably by about 3 possessions. Which, if you were to look at the box score and watch the game, it looks like if Minnesota didn't have stalled drives in the red zone, they would have run up the score on them. They had 6 red zone trips, but 1 touchdown. And 3 field goals, 1 turnover, I believe, and 1 turnover on downs. So really a big part of this is the freshman play at QB, where they had to be conservative in the red zone. But still, their freshman quarterback flashed quite a bit, and Minnesota's coaches seem to have a lot of confidence in him as he threw 30 times for, I think, 290 yards, which is almost 10 yards per attempt, which is pretty impressive and an upgrade, I think, even as a freshman at quarterback for Minnesota. For their past 2 quarterback iterations have been pretty bad. So this is I think a really, really good thing for Minnesota. Their defense also was really impressive, holding Buffalo to only 151 yards, while Minnesota had over 450 yards, really giving you an idea how much they actually dominated this game. And Darius Taylor is the real deal. He is all the hype. His natural strength and size and athleticism kind of reminds me a bit of Kenneth Walker. And at the second level, he's a nightmare for linebackers because he's elusive enough with his change of direction to go with his size and power. That's another reason I am giving Minnesota the benefit of the doubt here by now having them ranked higher than Nebraska here at number 10.